It's the start of the hardest week in the COVID-19 crisis. A new effort is underway to sanitize masks, cruise line tragedy unfolding, and recognizing everyday heroes. Some of the topics we'll talk about today with Joe Chiodo from KCTV5 News this morning, here to talk about what's making news this week. This is kind of a grim message from the Surgeon General over the weekend. This could be the deadliest week that the U.S. has seen so far in this crisis.
That's right, and it's not a message you want to hear, but it's one that we at least knew was coming. You know, we've been seeing this in other countries. There will be a peak, and once that peak happens, it then goes down. And that's what you should keep in mind when you hear this. But what the U.S. Surgeon General is saying is that this will be like a Pearl Harbor or a 9/11 moment. And it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, but really what that means is this will be the hardest and saddest week for Americans. As a whole country, they expect us to really see the number of deaths ramp up. It'll likely be one of those things where, you know, when you think of 9/11, you can think back to where you were when it happened. This might be the week where you think, oh yeah, I remember what I was doing the week whenever all of this really, we started to get a big picture of what was happening.
I think there's a lot of those moments happening with this crisis for a lot of people, from maybe the Big 12 tournament to the NCAA basketball games to maybe what happens this week.
And that might be the difference. What you mentioned, 9/11 was a surprise. This isn't a surprise anymore. We know it's coming, but it's still one of those moments that we'll remember for years and years to come. For the numbers, just so you know, 330,000 cases across the U.S. and about 10,000 deaths so far. So that is where we sit right now. Still to be determined on what exactly is to come from there.
This is kind of a hopeful story, helping out our frontline fighters, our nurses, our doctors, about sanitizing those masks that are so desperately needed.
And this is a positive thing that's coming from this. All this creativity we're seeing from the people in the front lines. I mean, we know doctors are smart, right? Yeah. Well, they're also pretty creative. This right here is UV light that I brought this story to you all last week on our news at 10 o'clock. This is a hospital in Omaha, Nebraska Medicine, and they are now using UV light to sanitize the face masks and the PPE that the doctors are wearing, and that will allow them to conserve it. They can now get more use out of these masks because they're running so low. New this morning, what we told you on our morning news was that there is a facility in Washington, the state of Washington right now, where they're actually using peroxide to sanitize the masks. They can do about 80,000 a day using hydrogen peroxide. They're building these gigantic facilities to make that happen. I believe they're also doing them in Ohio, New York, and DC. So as we see more and more of this pop up, that's more and more help for our workers on the front lines.
And they're using old storage container units to build those in, which was remarkable. I thought just the innovation to be able to reuse those type of things. So, and then back to this, kind of started in America. This whole tragedy was with cruise ships on the West Coast. More tragedy continues to follow these cruise lines, this time down in Florida.
That's correct. So this cruise ship that you're looking at right now is the Coral Princess cruise ship. It's docked in Miami. You know, you hear the numbers of this virus, and that kind of paints a picture. But for me, at least personally, what really paints it is when you hear the personal stories. And this is a sad one. A 71-year-old man died Saturday night after contracting COVID-19 aboard this cruise ship right here. Well, now there's a daughter who is working to get her mom off of that ship because she says she just can't imagine what it would be like to lose two parents to all of this. But that kind of shows you just the severity of this, and there is a personal level of all of this. But as we mentioned, we will hear the numbers continue to rise this week, and you will hear heartbreaking stories like that. But also keep in mind that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. This will end eventually, just like Pearl Harbor, just like 9/11. And we may never be the same, but you can't let it bog you down so much to the point where you just think that it's like this forever.
And there are the stories like that, but then there are people recovering from it and continuing on through lives. One of the cool things that we're doing on KCTV5 this morning is these everyday heroes, focusing on people in our communities that are continuing to go to work every single day because, I mean, they are essential to our community operating.
Yeah, I mean, you think of them, this morning we highlighted a mechanic, which a lot of people likely wouldn't think of as an essential business, especially with so many people staying at home. But now cars are on the roads, so that's needed. We'll talk about, you know, police officers, mailmen, all people like that are essential. We thank them for everything they're doing.
And that's every day this morning on KCTV5 News this morning. Joe, we'll see you tomorrow morning here at 9:08. We appreciate it, sir.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me again.
All right.